Crystal was saying, it's very much an indicator of where do you live in this country. So, for example, if I am from a rural area and I'm Hispanic and I basically am Catholic, the likelihood of meeting and actually promoting the idea of gun ownership is much more of self-identification than if I had those same qualifications but lived in downtown New York, Manhattan. And I think I think the more important part of it is to take a step back and recognize that that today, because of the tragedy that just happened in Newtown, what we're finding is that Republicans and Democrats, mothers and fathers across the aisle, are actually trying to figure out, what do we do? It's an opportunity for us to look at ourselves in the mirror and say, we need to solve this problem.
Okay, well, thinking of that, Julian, the American political establishment has been sadly slow to do anything about gun violence, but big business is responding somewhat. A major private equity firm sold its stake in the manufacture of Bushmasters. Giant retailers like Walmart made some minor adjustments. Is this a sign that perhaps this time, something substantive is going to change?
Well, I think something substantive is going to change. And first of all, to the statistics, remember, only 27% of American households are registered Republican. And a new poll just came out, which I think is a much more important statistic from CNN as we were going on air, that shows a majority of Americans actually want a ban on gun ownership. 6 in 10 Americans want a ban on assault weapons. And I think that's the more important. And you see not just Democrats and independents, but even some responsible Republicans in those camps. And I think this is the question now, is how you begin to effectuate change. And I think there's two prongs. There's a political one, and I think then there's kind of a grassroots one on corporations. On the political one, you know, we have this huge apparatus. We just came off a campaign, and this is like any other presidential or Senate campaign. There is a huge campaign out there that has grassroots capabilities, micro-targeting capabilities, social media capabilities. The progressive movement, independents, others, responsible Republicans now need to use that apparatus that was in place from the 2012 elections and make change happen, focus on a particular piece of legislation. This is an opportunity to break the back of the NRA, and I think that can be done. I think, secondly, you could pick 10 to 20 Republican districts. You could develop a coalition of parents, of police officials, of teachers, and a whole host of other civic leaders that would be for taking a Republican member out of Congress if he was going to become a stooge for the ridiculous position and arguments that the NRA has put forward. And third, to your question about the fact that Cerberus just sold the ownership of the manufacture of the rifle that was used in Newtown. It is very easy, I think, to develop and I've seen corporations change their behavior when you have an effective grassroots campaign. So if you were to, say, choose Walmart or Dick's Sporting Goods, which, as you know, also stopped selling the guns, yes, and you were to start doing a very effective online and traditional campaign that makes clear that the executives of these companies are taking blood money, you will see companies change their behavior very, very quickly. It's been done in a lot of other contexts. The key now is for the progressive movement and other like-minded individuals to use all of these various things at their disposal to make change happen in the political arena and in the corporate arena as well.
Yeah. Now we should say that Walmart is actually still selling these weapons.
Right. They're a good target.
Right. But you know, this private equity firm that we were talking about, they were actually pushed into this because the California State Teachers Retirement System, one of its biggest investors, pressured them. Now, is that an example of the kind of, if you like, consumer action that people can take now?
Absolutely. And
I mean, should we, all of us, be reflecting on, if we do have a retirement plan, who is taking our investment?
Absolutely, absolutely. And also, to Julian's point, I mean, the social media aspect of this, just expressing those views, telling companies, telling corporations, telling politicians what is acceptable and what is unacceptable to you. And I'll give you a couple of concrete examples. You'll remember very well the horrific comments that Rush Limbaugh made about Sandra Fluke on his program.
And I remember what you
backlash.
did. You led the way in that.
Well, there was a huge wave and a huge backlash. A lot of advertisers dropped his show because they didn't want to support that sort of hate speech, and a number of stations also ended up dropping. One other quick example, we had Susan Komen for The Cure also being forced by public outrage to reinstate their long-standing partnership with Planned Parenthood. And in Virginia, we had transvaginal probes, which were being mandated by the government, and that was also pulled back despite the fact that Republicans held all the levers of power because because of public outrage. So that is the true way to hold politicians
exactly right.
and corporations accountable.
Yeah, and I think, and when we start talking about the new element here that I think what NRA is not thinking about, it's not banking on, is the transparency that social media actually provides. And all of a sudden, it's one thing to have a public outrage, but had this happened even 5 years ago, you wouldn't be able to all of a sudden mobilize in such a turn of the dime when you actually see results. Walmart is the #1 manufacturer, #1 seller of firearms. So while you go pick up your milk, you go out and pick up your ammunition. There's an opportunity for the Walmart mom to say, put her foot down and say, you know what, Walmart, we need you to change your ways.
So a couple things. Remember, it's important to keep the focus on the political arena as well, because we do need legislation, but also on the corporate arena. And there are various things. It's not just social media. It's consumer activism. And frankly, it's for people that are outraged at what happened. It is financial support. It takes a lot of financial support for groups like the Violence Policy Center, Brady Handgun Control, the Mayor's Organization, for them to be able to prosecute these campaigns.
Yeah.
But the point that I want to make here is, and I've seen this happen many times with corporate executives, you only need to take 1 or 2 out. If you develop a couple of million people who are threatening to boycott Walmart and to make clear that they think the CEO of Walmart is taking blood money by the fact that it continues to sell these semi-automatic weapons that are responsible for so much carnage in this country, you will see the change happen quickly. But it takes a coordinated campaign. You have to focus on 1 or 2 of the corporations. As soon as you have one of them fall, the others will see, and they will fall into place. So you need the political effort and you need the consumer effort at the same time.
Well,
and what Julian is describing is the perfect playbook of what the tobacco industry did and how basically they fell to their knees because of the organizing.
Absolutely. Maria Teresa Kumar, Crystal Ball, Julian Epstein, thank you so much, all of you. Stay with us, much more ahead.